Hello, I'm Bill Fox, and this program is about East Brunswick. I imagine that most of you know that in our form of government, the office of mayor, the position of mayor, is a part-time position. And that means that every day I go to work at my full-time job in Piscataway at Bell Communications Research. And that then raises a question, well, what happens to the town and who takes care of it and who sees that things get done? In this form of government, we have a very important position called business administrator, and that is the full-time position which monitors the operation of government and sees that things happen on a day-to-day basis. And with me is Greg Fehrenbach, who is our township administrator. And Greg, welcome.
Nice to be here.
I'd like to start out by asking you a little bit about your previous professional positions and where they were and what they were.
Basically, my background was in political science and economics, and I wanted to get involved in government in some way. I had a professor when I was in undergraduate who tried to steer me out of international and say that the really active place where things are going on is in state and local government. And I followed his direction, somewhat out of a sense that it was right, somewhat out of a sense that that came a little closer to what I was trying to do. When I first got involved in it, I was involved in actually a social planning operation, working for the Office of Economic Opportunity back under Johnson's program of the Great Society. And I worked in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for a while doing that sort of work. I decided that I wanted to try to get a little closer to what was actually going on because it was still a rather large agency in a large city, and went to a smaller place, Easton, Pennsylvania, where I did some similar work, except it was in a planning office. And from there, I did some work with urban renewal, some work with housing planning, and actually then got into some land use planning, environmental planning, transportation planning. From there, I found out that the plans that I was working on were being done, and they were being written, and they were being filed away, and very little was happening to them. And I thought that maybe that wasn't where I was going to be able to find any satisfaction. And so while I got into the business in order to help people, I was finding out that I wasn't giving a lot of help. I was talking a lot, and I was seeing people, and I was attending neighborhood meetings, but it didn't seem as if very much was happening because everything was getting stuck when it got into the administration of the city. I decided at that point to start looking for a position that might give me some administrative background, and then took a position in Moorestown in southern New Jersey, right outside of Camden, where I learned a few things. One was that the community was a very stable, very nice place to live, and they had a certain conservative orientation. They weren't willing to take care of everybody in the world, but they were willing to take care of those people who they felt responsible for. And I started doing subdivision reviews, zoning ordinance amendments, supervising construction inspection, and that sort of work, and then moved into general administration, being responsible for such things as personnel, labor relations, salary surveys, township clerk activities. I served as a township clerk for a while. From there, I went to Ocean Township in Monmouth County. And in that position, it was almost totally my responsibility to make sure that the operation ran. It was a manager form of government. That made me, in that case, the chief executive officer.
Now, in the manager form, how does that work?
Well, essentially, 5 council members are elected. Those 5 council members hire a manager. That manager is then responsible, almost as a mayor would be in this form, for all of the hiring, firing, discipline, contract negotiations, whether they be labor contract, procurement contract, interagency contract negotiations. It was responsible for supervising all of the various departments the township had, including one almost country club activity where we had a pool and tennis club, and also was responsible for relations with the various agencies and authorities in the community, essentially in that case the sewage authority, which was the principal authority. The council would deal with the administrative staff through the manager, and all recommendations for the council were brought by the manager. The advantage of the form is that the council was clearly the employer and the manager was clearly the employee, but that there were statutory protections for the manager to make sure that the powers of the two were balanced. And it essentially, how do you say, it fostered cooperation. The council would permit me to take part in certain policy issues, while I would permit them to express their opinions and even in some cases participate in certain administrative issues. One way in which we did that, and the same sort of thing was done here, was the way we went through a hiring process. And it was a very complicated assessment center is what it's called. It includes role plays, group interaction, and interviews in addition to certain analyses that the candidates have to do. And we used it in Ocean Township for the purposes of hiring a public works director and a municipal engineer and a director of community services that was really a psychological social work service we provided the community. In East Brunswick, we've used it so far for the director of public works position and modified it some for hiring the tax assessor and for hiring the new director of recreation and parks.
New Jersey is, I think by most assessments, a highly political state. What's your sense of the tradition or lack of a tradition of professional management in government in New Jersey?
There are 567 municipalities in the state. Of those, there are about 175 to 200 that have essentially professional managers, administrators, meaning people that are doing that as a full-time job, that they have obtained the position as the result of some previous experience, and that it was not tied to some specific political decision. There are, of those remaining communities, a number that have clearly political positions in which the administrator, whether it be a township committee form, a borough council, a city form, have chosen a person for the administrator position from those people that have participated in the election process. New Jersey has an association of managers and administrators called the New Jersey Municipal Management Association. And there is a national equivalent of that, the International City Management Association. One of the tenets of each one of those associations is that the person that serves in the administrator capacity may not have any political affiliations whatsoever in the community in which that person is serving and in the community in which that person lives. Many managers, administrators live in one community and work in another. And it's to assure that they remain apolitical and therefore are able to serve what is to be the greater good of the community and not get involved in the political problems that may occur in a community. And I'd just like to build on that for a minute. In the position in which I served, especially in Ocean Township, we had 2 Republican Assembly members and a Democratic state senator. I had to maintain very close relations with those 3 people in that environment. And it was important that they didn't consider me being part of one party or another if they were going to be able to deal with the problems that I had. Similarly, when I was negotiating with communities that we were adjacent to for interlocal services contracts to resolve traffic problems or drainage problems, it was important that they didn't cast it as a political issue. One of the reasons it worked rather well in Ocean Township was that it was clearly a nonpartisan government. Many of the council members did not have a strong party affiliation with either the county Democratic or Republican Party. And at least from my standpoint, in that environment, it worked very well.
Let me ask you a fairly broad question in a sort of generic sense. What are the goals? What are the objectives of a professional manager? What is it that the professional manager, a person who calls him or herself a professional manager, what is it that they try to bring to government?
I think there are several elements. One is a certain trust from the citizenry that what is taking place is reasonable and is something that they could expect that they probably would have done if they were in there themselves. A sense of honesty. There is a code of ethics that is adopted by the International City Management Association that New Jersey has adopted, and it is a condition of participation in the association that they abide by that. In the event they don't, we have an ethics committee that reviews the behavior of administrators or managers in New Jersey in the event that they have done something improper in their office. We're presently investigating 3 of those situations in New Jersey right now, 3 more than we've had over the last 6 or 7 years. There haven't been any up until recently. Presently, I'm serving as the president of that association, and we are very concerned about the fact that periodically people will mix up the professional manager with the one who has attempted to take the position politically. And it all depends on the route that you attempt to get to the position. There are tenets of good management. There is an assumption on the part of most people who are managers that there is an ability to bring certain business principles to the operation of government. Not just the concept of efficiency or effectiveness, but the concept that there are procedures that ought to be followed, that there are issues of fairness, that employees are treated equally, that they're not treated with, hey, you're a good Joe, I'm going to take care of you, but you weren't nice to me last time, and so I'm going to knife you in the back. It's somewhat important maybe to go back to the beginning of city management. There was a reform movement in the late 1800s, early 1900s that related both to the election process. It was called the short ballot movement, to try to reduce the number of names on the ballot so it was comprehensible to people who were voting. The second element of that reform movement, and the National Municipal League was involved in that, was to create this professional management cadre so as to improve the management of cities that at that point were essentially ruled by political decisions. Political decisions in the worst sense of the word, as opposed to what is a better sense, the differences of opinion that come out of the two-party system. That then comes forward into this code of ethics and into these management principles. New Jersey has taken it several steps beyond what a number of other states have. New Jersey's done it almost through a state level. New Jersey is sometimes referred to as a home rule state, and it isn't. New Jersey is very heavily governed by the state government. Local municipalities are clearly a creature of the state, and the Division of Local Government Services oversees a great number of things that go on. They investigate things that happen in communities that people don't feel comfortable with. Our association and the members in this association have a very good working relationship with that agency. We have placed people periodically as interim managers in communities to assist them before they make their decision to actually find an appropriate manager. If I had to identify what the basic principles are, they're essentially fairness, honesty, and building trust in the government.
There are a lot of nice people who would not necessarily make for good government. There has to be something beyond that.
Well, there's an issue of the training. The training that takes place is typically in the area of management skills, financial skills, planning skills. People that come to the profession have come out of a series of backgrounds that have varied over the history of city management, which in this country now is about 70 years old. The original source of city managers were city engineers. There were people who understood public works and could direct public works type activities. By the time the profession got into the 40s after World War II, there was more of a concern for the financial condition of the community. And the source of a number of city managers were out of the area of finance, and they were accountants and people with that sort of a background. In the 50s and early 60s, there essentially were two origins for city managers. One was out of a cadre of planners, people who were interested in the redevelopment of cities and bringing life back into places where it seemed to have left, and also those who had specifically studied the principles of business management as applied in government. And a number of masters in public administration programs developed. New Jersey presently has a number of them at Kane, Fairleigh Dickinson, Rutgers, and those programs are producing a number of public managers. The way I approached it, and for each one of us that are in this profession, we all have somewhat of a different orientation. My approach was really through a planning end, which is one of the reasons why I liked the position in East Brunswick and why I wanted to come here, was because of the role that the manager was permitted to play in the community development process and the land planning process. And so I consider that to be somewhat of a specialty. I'm a professional planner. I'm a member of the American Association of Certified Planners. And so that element I have a particular interest in. And you and I have talked about this on several occasions, tend to be very interested in the fiscal affairs of the community and tend to be very conservative. And am very happy with the decision that the council made several days ago regarding the trust funds, in which they've taken the host community benefits, as you recommended, and put those aside for particular purposes so that there is a relatively well-established, concretized policy as to what's to be done with those monies. And so that is a second area that I have a great deal of interest in. Because of different experiences over the last, whatever it is now, 14 years or so, I have, because of certain problems, developed certain special interests. I can say that while I had to be somewhat concerned in the past about snow plowing, I never had quite the need to understand it to the extent that I came to understand it during January and February of this year. And so now I have developed a very strong interest in that, and I'm almost looking forward to, though I want to see the summer first, I'm almost looking forward to the next snowstorm to see whether or not these changes that we've made, the modifications that have taken place, the information we've gotten from other professionals in the field, is going to make the kind of changes that we expect to take place.
I'm sure there are a lot of people watching this who can't wait either,
I'm sure,
so they can see whether all of that works. Let's talk specifically about East Brunswick a little bit, and let's talk first about your particular responsibilities here. What is the position, what are the responsibilities of the administrator in East Brunswick?
Under the statute, they are one thing, and the way they operate in East Brunswick, they're slightly different. Under the statute...
Well, I hope we're not breaking the law.
No, it goes beyond it, though. Under the statute, the requirements are essentially that I am to assist the mayor in the budget preparation process, make sure that there is a systematic personnel system and purchasing system in place. And that is essentially what the statute is limited to. There is another element in there that states that, and do whatever else may be required by the mayor, or to the extent is authorized by the mayor, by the council. In East Brunswick, the previous administrators have done a very good job in terms of setting up personnel policies and purchasing policies. There is a very large administrative manual that was produced during John Runyon's tenure, and that particular function then slips aside. The roles here begin to include the maintenance of those functions, such as labor negotiations, dealing with the 4 unions and negotiating those contracts, dealing with contractual problems that occurred during that period, dealing with non-contractual employees in the personnel sector, making sure that local public contracts law requirements are satisfied in the bidding process, and those sorts of things. So that maintenance takes place. The budgeting process is modified every year somewhat, and with the inclusion of the Long Range Finance and Budget Committee, that has made it a slightly more complicated system than it was prior to that. The attempt to make sure that sufficient information is provided to the council in a cohesive, understandable fashion is something that the former Assistant Administrator Wendy Wolf and I spent a good deal of time working on during the last 2 budget sessions. But then there are other things, and the other things deal with making sure that certain capital improvements are being implemented, that they're on schedule. If they're not on schedule, why they're not, and making sure that you and the council and residents are aware as to why that is not taking place. As happened the other night, the information that I had to provide regarding Fern Road and the Carriage Square berms, where now on Writers Lane you see lumps of soil. There ought to be nicely landscaped slope berms with landscaping. And
is it not the case that when the charter for East Brunswick's current form of government was written now almost 25 years ago, it was written to broaden the responsibility of the township administrator in the sense that while in some forms of government or some governments the township administrator is simply another department head and all department heads report to the mayor, is it not the case that our charter specifies that the department heads report to the mayor but through the administrator?
Yes. One of the reasons I was interested in coming here is that with a few exceptions, which are required by statute, the position is very similar to a manager form as one would find in one of the 45 communities in the state that have that form. Mm-hmm. It is probably one of maybe 3 non-manager charters and codes that do that, and that put the manager in a supervisory position over department heads, have the ability to allow the administrator to coordinate the operation of a bunch of departments. And in this organization, that is needed a great deal. And I think maybe we might spend a little time later on that point. The organization in East Brunswick is rather complex, not just because of the people that are involved, not just because of the myriad of services that the organization provides, and it does provide a great deal more than a lot of other communities do, but that there is so much citizen participation in the process. I sometimes wonder, and it's one of the reasons why I'm having some difficulty answering your question, I sometimes wonder after about 10 or 12 hours, what did I do today? And I know that I haven't gotten out for lunch, and I know that my ear feels like it's the other end of the telephone, but I start trying to analyze what's taken place. I'll give you a small comment. Jerry Bittner, who is the administrator in South Brunswick, is a friend of mine, a former president of the association. Wrote me a little note recently saying, I see the functions that you've given to the assistant administrator. What do you do? I'm envious. And you start raising that question. There is a great deal of time spent in this position making sure that people are aware of what's going on. And
by people, you mean?
I mean by residents, by council members, by members of boards and commissions, by dealing with employees in the organization that only have a scant understanding of what's going on. People in the community, always, not just East Brunswick, everywhere, believe that if there's somebody associated with the government, that person ought to know everything that's going on. And we have attempted through a newsletter, through an employee newsletter, through personal contacts, through executive staff sessions, to try to get all of that information out so people in the organization can answer questions that citizens raise. we're still not there because people still are scratching their heads saying, what's going on? But the need to get that information out takes a great deal of time. You can't do it all by memorandum. And when you do it by memorandum, it's one-way communication, and the person can't ask a question back to enlarge upon the item in that memorandum they didn't understand. You know that we're in a process right now of trying to set up a goal-setting session. And that goal-setting session was not simply a means of me saying, I want it, now let's do it. It was a system of saying, what should it look like, what form should it have, and trying to incorporate a number of different people in the development of that. A couple of council members, several staff people, getting some response and some feedback. And if one deals in fiat, one can get a great deal done. If you try to deal in participatory decision-making and allow other people to get their views involved and shape what that final decision is going to be, it takes a great deal more time. And that is a tradition that existed here prior to my being here, and one that I don't in any way want to hurt or, trying to think of the word, in some way reduce it. I think it's good for the community. While I think it makes it difficult to govern, it's good in the end because more people have had a chance to shape what that final decision is.
And I think it didn't happen by accident in that it was designed that way. Question I'd be interested in, you've been in management positions in 2 other communities before coming to East Brunswick. Mm-hmm. As an aside, I was trying to think earlier how long you have been here. It's 2 years
2 years,
now?
a few days
Yes,
ago.
it seems like an instant.
It seemed like an instant to me.
How would you characterize East Brunswick as compared to, say, Ocean or Moorestown in your perception of the community and where it's at and the things that go on here?
I came here with the assumption, the wrong assumption, but I came here with the assumption that, well, if you look at it from the standpoint of population, from the standpoint of ratables, from the standpoint of the area of the community, it was a little less than twice the size of where I'd been before. And then I got here. And it's not an arithmetic progression. It's clearly a geometric one. The community is very vibrant. A lot of places leave government in the hands of a couple of people. Nobody attends meetings, or very few attend meetings. They come out during the election. When there's an issue that affects their neighborhood, they're there, but every other time you don't see them. That is not the case in this community. First of all, in the first 6 or 7 months I was here, I tried attending as many meetings that I could attend to meet people in the community. I never got to every one of the committees, and I was out every night of the week.
These are township?
These are township committees such as Water Policy Advisory Board, Library Board, Planning Board, Zoning Board of Adjustment, Recreation Advisory Board, Arts Commission, Local Assistance Board, and I can go on and go on. There are just an incredible number of them here, which goes back to that comment before about citizen participation. The activity level in the community, while it may be called a township and people may not like the word, is as active, it has as much human interaction going on in it as one could expect in any city. The services the township provides, I mean, just one that is incredible is the fact that East Brunswick provides more commuter parking than any community in the entire state. And we're the 41st largest. That means there are 40 communities that are larger than East Brunswick, and we are providing more commuter parking than anybody else in the state. The water utility services a great number of residents in the town, a higher proportion than what I am aware of in the other communities that I've worked in. In terms of the other services we offer, such as senior citizen services, we're providing counseling services, which are vitally needed by senior citizens, but in a lot of communities in the state, they don't have it available to them. and they suffer from not having that available. The citizenry is very knowledgeable, and they participate. If they're not on a board, if they're not on a committee, we still see them at council meetings, at planning board meetings, and at other meetings within the community. Within the first couple months here, there was a question regarding the tax assessing practices in the condominiums. Over 300 residents from the townhouses and condominiums came to that meeting with objections about what the tax assessor had previously done. A couple weeks after that, there was a problem with the Route 18 indoor market. The council chambers for 3 straight meeting nights in July and August were filled. It is vibrant, it is active, people participate, they don't have any problem telling you what their feelings are or what their concerns are. The problem with that scale of activity is being able to make it manageable and being able to do something with it. We receive a number of suggestions as to how we can improve programs, and those suggestions come from residents, they come from employees in the organization, and it's difficult to take those ideas and begin to build on them and use them. And people feel sometimes as if their ideas aren't wanted if they don't see something happen to them. And sometimes all it is it's not that we don't want them. It's the resources don't seem to be there to be able to implement them and get them in place, because a lot of these ideas are extremely good.
In your view, what are the most important issues confronting the community these days?
The community has resolved a lot of basic issues. The ones that I think that are presently affecting people in the town, affecting me, I have been a resident for a year now. Traffic seems to be an item that is on everybody's mind. Not just an issue of being stuck in it, which is what we all are, and the probability is that is going to continue because of the pass-through traffic through this community, since it is a crossroads. But the question of the safety, the Fern Road, Cranberry Road intersection is an indication of that. A problem that has existed for a long period of time, a problem that is really a county problem because it is a county highway, a problem that the municipality decided to move on, and we've been able to obtain some state assistance in getting that project done and is now underway. The fact that a number of the roads in the township were built for certain purposes years and years ago, but they're not being used for those purposes now. Hardenberg Lane, New Brunswick Avenue were not originally built to either carry the kind of traffic it does or carry the volume of traffic. And by kind of traffic, I mean people who want to be from point A to point B in a split second, and people that don't want anything in their way and are driving relatively high-powered cars. They were used originally by horse and buggies, they were used originally by Model Ts, and they've essentially been in that condition. New Brunswick Avenue, Fern Road, Hardenberg Lane, which are the principal problem streets, have been funded, are on the drawing boards, or are in construction. And if things happen the way they're supposed to, within approximately a year and a half, we will see that work completed, and we will see some of it completed within the next 6 months.
I know that unfortunately garbage is on everybody's mind these days. How do you assess what's going to happen with that, where we might wind up?
If I'm permitted to make personal opinions here, I think it runs something like this. New Jersey is the densest populated state of the 50 in the Union. It is a state that has become very suburban in character. We are building on everything. It is not that it has dense cities, it has suburbs that have spread across what was farmland, what was forest, what was recreational area. 20 years ago, there were areas in Ocean County and Monmouth County that were simply recreational. They were for the summer, and people packed up and left. They are now commuting, and they are generating people. the population in this state pretty soon will exceed the population of New York City, and that has not been the case ever. The state seems to have this desire, as at least the freeholders in Morris County and Somerset County seem to believe, that while they can generate waste, that they don't have to take care of it. They can throw it on somebody else. And we happen to have been the recipients of that. The problems at Edgeboro, at least from my perspective, are a problem not of kind, but a problem of degree. They're not a problem of garbage as they are a problem of the incredible quantities of garbage. And that the people that run Edgeboro were done a dirty deed. The residents of East Brunswick were done a dirty deed. The residents of Middlesex County have been done a dirty deed by the state, who forced the garbage in this location, but more so by the politicians who in Morris and Union and Somerset counties played the role in its worst form as panderer to take care of those constituents who said, well, not in my backyard, please, I can't handle that. And said, hey, we can dump it down in Middlesex County, and if we don't do anything, hey, the state's still going to have to dump it down there. It seems to me, however, that we have a responsibility, municipalities in Middlesex County, to find a place within our own county for that. And the judgment as to what the best location should be has to be based on what is the best location in New Jersey, in Middlesex County, I'm sorry. If the decision, as the result of a factual analysis, shows that Edgeboro is the safest and most appropriate location for an ash dump to be located, then it should be. If the factual analysis shows that there is a relatively higher degree of potential contamination of the groundwater aquifer, if there is a higher potential of health risks to be experienced by some population in Middlesex County as the result of the airborne material that may be blown away from the site as the result of the ash dump, then it is an inappropriate site and it shouldn't take place there. But the thought that some people in East Brunswick have that Edgeboro has been a dumping facility long enough and it should stop may not be an appropriate approach if places such as Monroe and Cranberry and South Brunswick would clearly adversely affect an aquifer or have some other adverse environmental damage. I think that the fact the freeholders have said that a quid pro quo of extending the use at Edgeboro is to get rid of Somerset, Union, and Morris County, and that DEP has to do it, and that if they don't, it doesn't happen, is an appropriate response.
But that's the key assumption, and there's no guarantee that that's going to take place. Or if it does take place,
no guarantee.
Or if it does take place, that in the future some other government official, the successor to the current commissioner of the DEP, will not make a decision to say this garbage from other places has to go there.
I would go one step further. The state has given us no reason at all to believe that they will be able to accomplish that.
I want to come back to the state in just a minute,
Okay.
but and I agree with your analysis of the situation. It seems to me, though, that without the guarantees, either through legislation or some other means, that it may not even if it was the right thing to do, it might not be worth it, given the risk and what we've been through in the past over the past 3 years with all of that garbage going in there.
You're aware that several of us, Bert Bush, Lou Neely, Tom Van, Ed Jablanowski, and I, went down and visited DEP
Yes.
to talk about the potential use of the landfill as either something for the municipality alone or for some other purpose. That analysis said one thing in it, and that was that even if DEP didn't have the power to take over that landfill and direct it to be used by people from out of county, that some court would have the ability to do that. Even if there is legislation, it is conceivable that a court would have the ability to do that. And under those circumstances, one would have to say that we can't get any hard and fast guarantees. We may be able to get legislation. We may be able to get the state to put up a performance bond or get the county to put up some performance bond where they end up losing a great deal of money to the municipality in the event they can't keep the out-of-county waste out. But it seems to me that we can't bury our heads in the sand. We can't expect that we're going to transport our waste to Poland, Ohio. And morally, my problem is that I can't see why my waste or my next door neighbor's waste ought to be going to some other state, just as morally I can't see how my friend's waste in Union County or my friend's waste in Morris County has to find its way to my back door.
As of this taping, Edgeboro is due to reach capacity in approximately 5 weeks. Do you have any sense at all of what the state intends to do, or do you know of any plans the state has to deal with that situation?
Nobody will go on record and nobody will say anything categorically. But during that meeting and during several conversations before it and in discussions with a couple of people at the county level, there's the clear appearance that in the event the Edgeboro does not or runs out of capacity at some point in time before there has been an approved plan for an expansion of the site, before the 3 counties have completed their transfer stations and have decided on a place to transfer it to in either Pennsylvania or Ohio, that they are going to do the only thing they can do, which is authorize the expansion of the site on an emergency basis.
And that means?
And I see DEP, as soon as that site reaches expansion, either authorizing an increased elevation or authorizing them to open up what the Herberts define as a virgin area within the bentonite wall.
The bentonite wall being?
The landfill is constructed in such a way as it operates like a tub or a sink, and in that tub or sink there is a bottom of very thick clay, and inserted into that clay are impermeable bentonite walls that create this bathtub all around the site. Any liquids that leach, and that's generally called leachate, through the landfill material are picked up through a series of wells and piping in the bottom of the landfill, and that then is eventually aerated and finds its way into the Middlesex County.
So there are areas
system.
which are within this environmental containment which don't have garbage in them.
Yes.
And the state could order that those areas be dumped in.
Yeah, exactly. There's approximately 90 acres of that space. Now, if you've listened to if the people listening to this have listened to the reports from the county on what they want to do, it is those virgin areas, one virgin area and one area of ponds, that they want to use for the future landfill. That in the next several months, that it would actually be taking the elevation of the landfill, which was supposed to be at an elevation of 87 feet, is now going to an elevation of approximately 110 feet, and raising that another 30 feet to an elevation of approximately 140. It appears as if DEP is going to rule that, and that is what they are going to want to do.
And by the way, we're going to fight that.
Yes.
As hard as we can. How long do you feel it will be before the garbage crisis, or what I've described as becoming the garbage wars, are going to be resolved? Is it 6 months, a year, 6 years?
In 1970, the state adopted the Solid Waste Management Act. Each county at that point created a Solid Waste Advisory Commission. Those advisory commissions have been operating since 1970. We have, I think, 6 out of 21 counties that have actually made decisions. That means there are 15 that have not, and we fall into that category of one of the 15 that have not. In the worst sense of politicians, what they have done is They have just procrastinated because the longer they can get away without making the decision, they've foisted that decision onto somebody else who follows them. They don't want to make the decision. I, for one, was somewhat pleased that the freeholders in Middlesex County at least finally made a decision. Now, if it's not something that works, it's at least something to be attacked and someplace to move from. No, I don't see it being 6 months. I don't see it being 2 years. And I don't really see it happening until DEP makes the decision and the legislature approves that decision, that they're going to have to make the decision as to where those landfills and those resource recovery plants and those recycling operations go. Because while they have taken counties to court, they have sued them, the counties have had to pay fines, it hasn't done very much good, because as long as they don't have to make a decision, they don't care.
And quite frankly, my opinion is that the fact that people have to ship their garbage to Poland, Ohio, that it's going to cost $125 a ton in disposal fees versus $16.50 at Edgeboro, even that will not be sufficient incentive to get these counties to do anything about garbage. People would rather pay than deal with the problem. But then, and we could go on about garbage for a long time, and I don't want to, but ultimately Poland, Ohio will no longer be available. And then, you know, perhaps we can assemble all the barges in the world and bail up our garbage and put them on to circle the world forever as a way of disposal, because that's where we'll be if we don't do something. Well, we've talked about garbage, we've talked about traffic. There are other areas that you see that should be of immediate concern to the community.
At least the immediate concern to me is the way in which the township, as I refer to it, the organization, are providing services. I hear complaints from residents periodically about the way in which they've been treated by a particular municipal employee. And sometimes, and periodically, those complaints are valid. And sometimes they're not. One of the things that happens is that while employees attempt on the whole, there are exceptions, but attempt on the whole to provide decent services to the residents, sometimes the demands or the desires of the residents are really more than is reasonable. And an employee that is frustrated by the fact that they haven't been able to do the things as well as they wanted to, and are now being castigated over the telephone by a resident, doesn't do anything to help the situation. One of the things that bothered me was the distrust that I noticed within the group of municipal employees when I first came here. And I tried to figure out where it was coming from. And when I finally spent some time meeting residents, I noticed a distrust on the part of the residents. It seems to me that at least in this in this community, the distrust seems to breed on itself. And somebody's got to be able to make that leap and say, hey, look, I'm going to give that person a chance, and I'm going to try to place some trust, and I'm going to give them a second chance, and I'm even going to give them a third chance, because we're not going to be able to change this overnight. This organization falls on its face sometimes. In terms of the work on New Brunswick Avenue, I could have been sure that that work would have been done a lot sooner than it is. There are reasons why it is not yet done, and it relates to problems going back into the 1700s when some of the original surveys were done. It relates to running out of certain employees having illness in their family or their own illness. It relates to plans from the water utility that automatically or just recently decided the need to install a new line in that road, and so you don't want to go ahead and put a new surface on it if you're going to have to dig it up and put a new line in. And most of these conditions have somewhat reasonable explanations. But because we're frustrated by the fact that the work's not being done, that it's not being produced as well as it should be, the first attempt is to lash out. And if there's one thing that I think could help the community, is if residents would show a certain amount of patience and would essentially say, do I want to be treated like that? There has been, over the last 4 or 5 months, a loss of morale on the part of a lot of employees in the township. That loss of morale has occurred as the result of the election that took place, because it was clearly a vote of discontent. And there's the feeling of, well, wait a minute, what have I been working for if people are so angry? There was a loss of morale when the budget process was going through because it was an unknown. There were suggestions and threats that this program was going to be cut, this person was going to be fired, this service was going to be dropped, and you could see it in some of the letters from residents. And now that we've gotten through the process and not very many changes were made, at least in terms of services provided, we've maintained those services. It's hard to get those employees motivated again to say, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do a good job. And so they need, and I'm being serious, they need some kind voices. And they need somebody to say, you're doing a nice job, and I really like what you're doing for me, and continue doing it. And I think that condition in this government right now is a major problem, because we have to do things about improving some of these services. That's the reason for that goal-setting session. That's the reason for one of the other programs I'm proposing for the department heads and executive staff, is that we have to deal with this perception that the kinds of services we're providing are less than adequate. And that is something that I really want to make sure takes place.
I know that you, together with the Long Range Budget and Finance Committee and Lou Neely and others on the staff, have been taking a look at East Brunswick over the next, or attempting at least to take a look at East Brunswick over the next 2 to 5 years, particularly with regard to our growth or lack of growth and financial situation that we might see a few years ahead. I'd like to talk about that a little bit. What kinds of things have you been examining, and what do you see on the horizon for 1989 or 90 in terms of where we are financially?
First of all, I'm approaching it somewhat conservatively.
As always.
As always, and as you always say to me. But one of the concerns I have is that the community has pretty much been dealing with the need to expand its budget needs by living off of the additional growth in the community. That condition is going to exist for a few more years. Conservatively, 2, if we project it out even further, maybe something in the order of 5 or 6 years. We're probably going to see, we're seeing it now, an upturn in the interest rates. That'll probably mean some slowdown in the economy. A slowdown in the economy means we're not going to see as many houses built, and so maybe it'll stretch it out some. There is a strong desire in this community to stabilize the tax rate, and it's justified, and I think it ought to take place. But there also is just as much of a desire to continue to receive services. And we're at a point now where in this budget process, that from now on, if we're going to cut, we're not just cutting what may be considered fat or a little bit of excess. We're down to raw bone. And to cut any more than this is going to mean that there's going to have to be a clear decision that we don't want to do something. That there's something that some group of residents are going to be willing to do without, or there's going to have to be a willingness to be able to pay for it.
And of course, being willing to pay for it means that there must be an increase in the property tax rate.
There has to be an increase in the property tax rate. The state of New Jersey and the federal government have, over the past 3 years by the federal government, over the past approximately 8 years by the state government, ever since the income tax went into place, have been slowly but surely either stabilizing or reducing the revenues we've received from those sources. Lou Neely is able to generate money out of nothing. And he does that better than anybody in this state could ever hope to. This town has a gem in his ability to generate interest on investments with a zero cash flow. That condition is only going to exist so long. it was severely damaged by the Tax Reform Act of 1986. The state government's desire to keep on taking more of our money, our meaning the 567 municipalities, to prop up their budget so they don't have to increase the state income tax, I just consider to be an illegitimate action. The fact that now what they want to do is they want to increase benefits for certain public pensionees and put it on the back of the local property taxpayer is just one more example of the fact that they're too distant from the people that elect them. And there is nothing over the next several years that is working in favor of helping municipalities reduce the local property tax. It's working in the opposite direction. The probability is that we're going to see, to the extent we can control it, incremental increases in the local property tax rate. I don't like that. I don't want to see it. But the alternatives simply are senior citizens saying that they're willing to deal with less services there. Businesses along Route 18 being willing to say that they're going to do with less police officers on the street. Residents being willing to accept the fact that they can't send their children to as many recreation programs as they do. And those really are the only other choices. And it seems to me that the next budget process and the one following that even more are going to require the governing body, you and the council, to make some very difficult decisions regarding whether or not that tax rate increases or whether or not those services drop, because that's the simple balance.
If I could sum that up, the good news is, and I think this is seen as good news by many people, that in 2 to 3 years, and really beginning now, we will not have the visible growth that we've had over the past, say, 5 to 6 years.
Yes.
The bad news is that it may cost more to live here if we want the services that we've been accustomed to receiving.
That development has brought a great deal of money in.
Okay. Gregory, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And as usual, I found it an interesting discussion. I hope the people who are watching our program do also.